And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Dennis Mellon. Dennis brings years of leadership experience as a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, a 28-year retired Alaska Airlines fleet captain in charge of 550 pilots and 40 instructors, and a best-selling author. He's an internationally recognized speaker, an executive leadership coach, and accredited athletic mental performance master. His target audience is future as well as established leaders. He attended numerous Air Force leadership schools and is graduated from the USAF Academy. He's a seasoned speaker whose goal is to bring education, inspiration, and entertainment to a variety of leaders looking to connect the culture with the vision.
We're thinking about business and how we lead in business. And business is this roiling, boiling pot of water. And there's nothing we can do with that. There's that volatility, that competitiveness, those things that are constantly there. But you can enter that water as a tiny coffee bean and start spreading throughout that water and influencing the water, and start converting some of your team members into coffee beans with the ultimate goal of changing your team from ordinary water into gourmet coffee. So let me ask you this. You're thinking, well, maybe I need this, maybe I don't. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the absolute best leadership, how would you rate yourself? Using that same scale, 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, how would your team rate you? There's a portion of you as a leader that needs to be self-aware that maybe what you think you are, where you think you are, is not where other people think you are. So when we look at business, we have events coming at us constantly. Events like, well, the pandemic, and there will be an outcome. And if we do nothing, that event is going to drive the outcome. But what we do as leaders to alter, change, or affect that outcome is the very essence of leadership. So I want to talk to you today about the ultimate KPI. We all have report cards, financial statements, metrics. Most companies, or a lot of companies, use KPIs, key performance indicators. What if I could give you the ultimate KPI that would drive all your report cards? Can you see where that might help you? The first key I want to talk about, and I'm going to use the acronym KPI, is culture. And I use K for, I didn't mispronounce or misspell it. But what is culture? Culture is the way we do things, the way we interact with each other, the way we help each other. And if we have a good culture, we take every challenge and change it into an opportunity. If you don't have a good culture, then what you get is the bare minimum from your team members. They do exactly what's in their job description and nothing more. They're in need of constant guidance because they're afraid to initiate anything. And they're focused on their own report cards, their own KPIs. What's one of the ways we can counter this? Here's an easy action item. A lot of times in a company, the CEO, the president, the owner will come up with the mission statement or the goal, the purpose of the company. What if we brought in some other team members to help develop that and massage that, that mission statement? Can you see where those people, as they come in, can start seeing how the company's mission ties in with their own personal goals and can help get inputs to them? And when they go back to their other teams or to the other parts of the company, they can start spreading like coffee beans in that boiling pot of water that we talked about. Another thing that's really easy is have activities to get connected, to get to know each other outside of that business relationship, to find out that Joe over here has 3 kids in college and he's wondering how he's going to pay for it all, or Diane over here has 2 parents in long-term care. Can you see where those outside business happenings, events are affecting their work? And if we can help them through that time, or even during that time, they're going to feel obligated to do more than just what's in their job descriptions. It allows us to develop vulnerability and trust with each other. What's a practical application of this? Back in about 2010, I worked for an airline that flew international cargo and troops to the Middle East. And they'd just gone through a sizable downsizing. And everybody was hunkered down in their own silos, taking care of their own report cards. And me, as an extrovert, I come in and go, I need to get to know these people. So I started a Friday lunch bunch, and we would go to various restaurants. And yeah, we would talk about business, but we also talked to each other, finding out things about each other. And by about the 6th or 7th week, we had 8 or 10 department heads and directors attending on a regular basis. And what we started noticing is we started coordinating more with each other because we knew and trusted each other. Instead of me going to my boss going to their boss going to them, we were working directly across from it because we trusted each other. We were committed to each other. And within about 4 months, unbeknownst to us, we started seeing a 10% uptick in on-time arrivals, fewer bags lost, fewer passenger complaints, which are 3 key performance indicators for any airline. And this was all because we were starting to be more efficient and working with each other. We were being those coffee beans and spreading our influence. Reflection question on this. Am I connecting my team members with the team's goals? Am I connecting my team members with the team's goals? The second key point that I want to bring up is positive leadership, and it's more of a philosophy than anything. It's changing every challenge that comes into and finding the opportunity in it. Because we talked about, if you don't have this positive leadership, if we have events coming at us and we have outcomes, if we don't fill it in with positive leadership, negativity will creep in. You'll start seeing that this constant volatility is affecting your opportunities, affecting your work performance. You're missing opportunities. Well, what can you do to change this? Now, I said it was more of a philosophy than anything. And this is an easy action item. We develop this mentality, and it's like the Navy SEALs use, DWI. And no, it's not driving while intoxicated, but rather deal with it. As in, oh no, we're surrounded by the enemy and we're running out of ammunition. Deal with it. Because the alternative is we're going to be killed or captured. Now, that's not going to happen in business, but there is dire consequence. There are dire consequences. Because if we don't have this deal with it, as we put this deal with it into our philosophy, we inspire innovation. Team members are engaged. They're trying to affect the outcomes of all the events that are flying at us. Now, what's a good example of this in use? A few years back in the Air Force, I took 15 crew members up to Anchorage, Alaska, and our daily mission was to fly south about 2 hours over the North Pacific and refuel a giant C-5 airplane that was going to Korea or Japan. On the last day, we were tasked with doing the same thing, returning to Anchorage, refueling the airplane, and then going to Hawaii. Now, because we had this philosophy within our squadron, within our the team, the 15 that I went up there with, one of the crew members came up and said, hey, Ace, the aircraft commander, if we put enough fuel on this, instead of coming back to Anchorage, when we finish refueling, we could just turn south. We could turn south and go directly to Hawaii. So we ran the numbers well within safe tolerances, and that's exactly what we did. When we finished the refueling, instead of the 2.5 hours going back to Anchorage and then 2 hours back to the same point, we went straight to Hawaii, and we saved over $150,000 in fuel costs alone. We did this, and we had the added benefit of arriving in Hawaii, all 15 of us on the beach before sunset with Mai Tais in our hand. How's that for an optimal solution? Okay, good. Reflection question. Are we missing opportunities due to my leadership style? Are we missing opportunities due to my leadership style? The last key, building those inner relationships between not only you and your team members, but between team members, and then outside your team to other teams in the company, and quite possibly your clients. Get that commitment and caring. Because if you don't have these inner relations built, you become the single decision maker. You get virtually no input from anybody. And the input that you get, you have to assimilate, and they're waiting on your decisions to do things. They're waiting on your directions. You lose out on options, you lose out on opportunities. What can we do to counter this? Again, more of a philosophy, but you have to create this environment within your team of a speak up culture, and culture with a K again. A speak up culture where positive, purposeful, productive conversations occur on a routine basis without fear of retribution, shame, or being called dumb, or what are all those things that happen when you don't have a speak up culture. You get to know your team better. You build that commitment and trust between each other. Case study on this. I worked for an airline whose home base was in Wisconsin. They had pilot bases in LaGuardia, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Norfolk, Virginia, and we did our pilot training down in North Carolina. Now, of all the leaders that I'm talking to on this call right now, you're looking at this and going, Dennis, you had a serious communication problem. I did. 600 pilots. If I send out an email, just like when you send out an email, I'm going to probably get 600 interpretations of what I said. So we started losing a little bit of standardization. The trend analysis for the check rides and for the ride-alongs and the simulators were going in a negative direction. Not into any unsafe area, but nevertheless, a negative trend. And because I had inputs from the FAA, from the company, and from the aircraft manufacturer that I had to get out to 600 pilots, there's no way I was going to go one-on-one with all of them to get that same interpretation. But what I could do is I could start meeting with the 40 instructors at a time and disseminate it that way. But I still had this distance problem. So I looked at my budget, had enough in the budget to buy these widescreen TVs for all of the bases, those old Spider telephone conference calls, and the assorted periphery and software that needed to do this. Keep in mind, this is in the days before Zoom, which made it so convenient. And what we saw after the first few months was an immediate dramatic increase in a positive direction on that trend analysis. So much so that we scratched our head a little bit and said, you know, what if we go to 2 a month? We went to 2 a month, and yeah, it was a trend in the right direction, but not quite as dramatic. But nevertheless, we are actually getting information disseminated, and people are interpreting it the same way. Reflection question on this one. Do we and my team, do we have a speak up culture? Do we have a speak up culture? Now, we've talked about culture with a K, positive leadership, and building those inner relationships. And if this became your new KPI, can you see where it's going to drive your performance, your strategies, optimizing processes, increasing your performance and your profits? Can you see where that would happen if you use this, concentrating on the culture, positive leadership, and inner relationships? Going back to the reflection questions, am I connecting my team with the team's goals? Are we missing opportunities due to my leadership style? Do we have a speak up culture? If you answered no to these, then, and I personally, any of the teams I had, those could always be improved, then you can see where working on this gives you some strategies and some possibilities on ways of doing things. But I want to review here. We talked about keeping your employees engaged, and you're thinking, I want to change my entire team into beans. I want to transform them into gourmet coffee. Because why is that so important? Why is it so critical for you as a leader to be a bean? There's a Harvard Business Review that shows that disengaged employees, quiet quitters, can cost you 18% of your payroll in lost performance. That's a lot of money that you're able to recover. And it won't appear on any financial statement. It appears in lost opportunities, fewer options, delayed decisions. It might show up indirectly in the absenteeism, the turnover rates, and your retraining costs. But it's something that's not, you can't put a definite number on it. Like it was just like we did earlier on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your leadership? Well, it's subjective. These are subjective changes, but that's a lot of money that you can recover if you will train your trainers, train your leaders for that next improvement that you're looking for. Because when we leave this talk today, I want you to be thinking about you becoming a bean, transforming your team from ordinary water into gourmet coffee starting today. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dennis, thank you very much. I do have a quick question for you
Yes, ma'am.
that I'd like to ask you to just embellish for me.
Okay.
What would you say is the single biggest influencer connecting culture to the company's vision or mission?
I would say that it's building those relationships. Nothing, trust is only built through creating the relationships where we can hold each other accountable and yet be kind, be grateful, and move towards that elite performance that we're looking for. And it's all based on the relationships. Almost every one of those points that I had with the KPI had something somehow to do with building those relationships.
And why is that important? Why
Well,
would you
that's-
say that's important?
That's there's a whole scheme here. You start by communicating and being transparent. You move to creating those commitment and caring that are so important in being able to trust each other that things are moving in the right direction. We all have talked about quiet quitters. Well, quiet quitters are just showing up and collecting a paycheck, basically. And if we can get them excited to where they feel like I get to go to work instead of I have to go to work through the relationships, that's what, what we're missing probably from all these Zoom calls we're doing is the water cooler talks where we get to know each other one-on-one.
Great answers. Great speech. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Dennis.